There is something strikingly wrong with the way you were taught to make things happen, and if you have ever watched Max move through life before the shift and after, you will recognize the quiet cruelty of that old teaching. You have been told to visualize, to plan, to wait, to trust the timing, and to keep faith, as if the universe were a postal service that needs time to process your order. You have felt the slow burn of disappointment, the way mornings taste like stale coffee because the promise has not arrived, the way your chest tightens when a new thought about your desire pops into your mind, and the tightness sounds like a tiny alarm bell under your ribs. The problem is not that manifestation fails. The problem is that you were trained to believe that what you want exists somewhere ahead in a distant timeline, and that belief animates a nervous system that lives in waiting. When your body lives from lack, the field mirrors that tone with ruthless precision and gives you more evidence to be anxious about. The good news is immediate, because the quantum field does not run on calendars. It responds to coherence. It does not reward struggle. It reflects the pattern you are already broadcasting. If you want acceleration, the task is not to chase the future. The task is to be a frequency that the field can't help but match. Imagine tuning an old radio. It is not about pulling the station to you. It is about stopping the tremor in the antenna. When the antenna stops shaking, the music comes through clean. The shortcut is not to hurry. It is to stabilize. If you will stay here with me for the next minutes, I will show you precisely what collapses possibilities into lived reality, and I will give you practices to stabilize your body into a signature that the field reads as inevitable. You know this pattern in your bones because you have lived it. Months of ritual, diaries full of scripted sentences, a visualization board dense with images, and the same silence in your mailbox. You breathe shallow and quick when you think of your desire. Your voice drops into a smaller register. Your shoulders lift toward your ears. Your tongue presses against the roof of your mouth like a tiny gatekeeper. You have been taught to believe that persistence equals proof, and persistence has become a performance that exhausts your parasympathetic capacity. The lie sits in plain sight, that temporal patience is the measure of spiritual maturity. In practice, it trains your autonomic nervous system to wait, and the waiting body is a poor transmitter of the signature you want to become. You have seen people like Jana and Ava practicing rituals for years and still returning to the same conversation about scarcity at dinner. You have watched Priya smile when she explained her vision board and then flinch when a text came in that confirmed what she feared. This is not coincidence. The nervous system reads belief as a set of muscles that are either tight with effort or relaxed in reception. If your muscles are braced, the field reads the bracket and delivers experiences that match the bracket. Practically, what this means is that your mental map that points toward future success is not wrong, it is incomplete. You need coherence in the present. Without it, intention collides with habit, and the result is delay. The consequences of this mismatch are felt as cycles that smell familiar because they are embodied. You feel the metallic tang of stress on your tongue when a deadline approaches. You wake up in the night with the sound of a ticking clock in your ears even when no clock is running. You have watched Marcus double down on affirmations and end each month with less energy, his apartment echoing with the soft hum of a fake certainty that never quite settles. Maria, a friend you trust, called you after 6 months of faith practice and said her chest felt heavy, like a wet cloth had been draped across her sternum. That heaviness is not a spiritual test. It is a somatic sign. The field reads the rhythm of your breath, the temperature of your palms, the steadiness of your voice. When you speak into existence from a body that vibrates with lack, the field composes matching evidence. When you embody the outcome first, even if you do not yet hold the objects you want, the field responds because coherence is the language it understands. This is why so many of the programs that promise delayed fruition actually install a timeline of waiting into your physiology. You begin to move through life as if tomorrow will rescue you, and that kind of timeline creates distance between who you are now and what you desire. When I explain this to a room of practitioners, you can feel the shift in air. People breathe deeper, or sometimes they hold their breath because the explanation activates a memory of all the times they were told to be patient. The theory I am asking you to consider is simple and precise. Quantum manifestation is not about attracting, it is about collapsing. Attraction implies distance. Collapse implies observation and coherence. In the double slit metaphor you have heard before, particles exist in a cloud of potential until they are measured. The act of measurement narrows possibilities into one. Here, the observer is not merely the thought, but the embodied pattern that stabilizes the observation. Think of coherence as a waveform that, when maintained, reduces the entropy of your possibility field. You are the tunable parameter. If your waveform is jittery, the field decoherents into noise and gives you outcomes that match the noise. If your waveform is steady, the field's probabilities reorganize and make certain timelines more probable. There is no mysticism required to say this. The language is analogical, but the mechanism is somatic. Coherence shifts your heart rate variability. It rebalances vagal tone. It alters hormone cascades that change the chemistry your body sends into the field. Max discovered this in an embodied way when a small internal experiment produced outsized external shifts within days. Max grew up moving between neighborhoods, sleeping sometimes on a twin mattress that smelled like rain and the lemon soap his grandmother used, other nights in a room with wallpaper patterned like tiny green leaves. As a child, he learned to make promises to himself after midnight, whispering lists into the darkness like spells. He trained in architecture because he loved the quiet geometry of buildings, the way lines held space. He studied engineering for sleep that answers to logic, and he could recite formulas like prayers. But after a sudden loss when he was 27, a mentor collapsing under an unfixable diagnosis, Max felt the ground of certainty give way. The loss taught him that plans break, and plans become brittle when life shifts. He began to pursue manifestation not as a hobby, but as a way to reconstruct safety. For years, he tried the rituals like a craftsman following blueprints. He meditated for precisely 26 minutes. He wrote gratitude lists in a soft orange notebook. He talked about alignment with colleagues in coffee shops where the air tasted like espresso in paper. Nothing matched his desire quickly. That turned into frustration. Then, one morning in a practice group with Dr. Elena, a somatics teacher who smelled faintly of eucalyptus and always had a slow laugh, Max tried a small body experiment. Instead of visualizing the outcome at arm's length, he allowed his chest to widen, softened the back of his throat, and let his tongue rest heavy like a weighted anchor. The change was microscopic, but his experience of himself shifted. He noticed the color saturation of the room felt different, like early evening light hitting glass. A friend, Sophia, called that afternoon with an opportunity that had been dormant for months. Within days, other small doors opened. Max did not discover magic. He discovered that his field responds to a present state of coherence and that when his body changed its template, the field reorganized with surprising speed. Now, let us name 5 people who will help you map this with specificity because you cannot become an instrument in isolation. Dr. Elena teaches you to feel the vagal shift in the throat. Jonah is the friend who checks in and says plainly when you are faking steadiness. Ava is the neighbor who presses a hard piece of bread into your hand and tells you to taste life without analysis. Priya runs a community circle where she rings a small bell and invites you to place your palm over your heart. Marcus keeps a spreadsheet of small experiments and will remind you of patterns you forget. Each of these people appears through the narrative with acts that matter. Dr. Elena holds your wrist to pulse and breath. Jonah texts a blunt question that wakes you. Ava cooks and shares food so you learn to ground through texture. Priya guides you into a short practice under an open window with wet air. Marcus sends a voice note recounting his failed attempts and what shifted exactly when he stopped forcing. These figures are not background. They are practical touch points you can test. Here is a practical set of steps that made the difference for Max and can be applied by you now. First practice is a grounding breath sequence combined with posture. Sit with feet pressed to the floor. Feel the grain of the chair beneath your thighs. Eyes soft and unfocused. Inhale through your nose for a count of 4, feeling the belly expand like a gentle swell against your palms. Pause for 2. Exhale through a slightly parted mouth for 6, letting your shoulders drop as if you are unhooking them from your ears. Repeat 6 times. You will notice temperature changes in your fingertips and the sound of your own blood become clearer in your ears. Second practice is a micro-embodiment rehearsal. With the object of your desire in mind, set your jaw soft, open the space behind your collarbones, and speak one sentence as if it is already true. The tone of your voice matters more than the words. Practice until the sentence roots into the chest like a slow plant. Third practice is a daily 5-minute sensory log. Each morning, touch a textured object, listen to one sound and describe it out loud, smell something simple, taste and name it fully, and note the surface temperature of your skin. This trains your nervous system to register presence and reduces the jitter that keeps timelines stretched. These practices are somatic and immediate. They alter heart rate variability and vagal tone, which in turn modulate the chemistry you project into the field in a way the field reads as a new baseline. A short technical explanation will help clarify why this works in accessible terms. Your autonomic nervous system modulates patterns of sympathetic activation and parasympathetic recovery. Coherence increases heart rate variability, which signals safety to the brainstem. Increased HRV correlates with better emotional regulation and less threat-based signaling. When threat signaling drops, your endocrine system reduces cortisol spikes and increases patterns that favor openness. These bodily changes create a different energetic signature that the probability field treats as a stable condition. In simpler words, the body sends cleaner, steadier packets of information to the field when it is more regulated. That is why embodiment is not decoration. It is the mechanics of measurement. Now listen to a short scene where Max and Jonah argue about speed because this is where tension makes a decision. You can hear the city outside, a distant siren, the clink of a cup on a saucer. Jonah says, "You are romanticizing quick wins." Max replies, "This is not about wins. This is about the way I hold myself when I say what I want." Jonah presses, "So you think a posture will change reality on its own?" Max answers, "I think posture changes the chemistry in my body, and chemistry reorganizes my probabilities." Jonah sighs and touches the bridge of his nose. You can almost taste the bitter coffee as they speak. That exchange is sensory. It includes sound of street traffic, the rough cotton of Jonah's sweater under his fingers, the metallic ring of Max's keychain when he drops it on the table. You feel the electrical tension in the air like a low static. That conversation makes Max choose to keep practicing rather than retreat into old strategies. There are moments of tension that require you to stay with discomfort rather than flee. One moment is when Max receives a delayed email that could confirm his worst fear. A memory of scarcity surfaces and pulls the breath shallow. He remembers nights when he counted coins and the smell of the laundromat detergent. He senses old shame and a voice from childhood that says you are not enough. For 2 paragraphs, you sit in that memory, feel the weight behind the sternum and the taste of pennies on the tongue as a metaphor for small value. You are asked to name the feeling and then choose a different muscular pattern. That choice is small and decisive. Another moment occurs when a friend, Sophia, offers him a job that seems safe but not aligned. The internal conflict hums with the noise of a faulty radio. Max remembers the architecture studio he once loved and the texture of plaster under his hands. He has to decide whether safety will be a slow erosion of self. That tension lasts and sharpens into a decision to risk alignment over comfort. A third tension happens when a public talk he gives does not land as he hoped. His throat tightens, someone in the audience yawns, and the old voice says retreat.
He feels the sting on his cheek and the salt of near tears. He must decide to continue speaking from the newly trained coherence instead of shrinking into doubt. Each of these moments is under 600 characters of concentrated feeling in their internal representation, and each time, the decision to embody trumps the reflex to wait. Around here, I want you to participate in a simple way, because community shapes outcomes. If you have ever sat in your kitchen at midnight and repeated an affirmation that felt hollow, type one word in the comments that names how that felt. Write tired, write hopeful, write skeptical, write ready. Your single word matters because it lets the field and our community know where you are and helps me tailor what to teach next. When you share, you also see that others are not alone in this difficulty, and that is visceral. The room of voices becomes thicker and warmer. This small act is a practice in social
Coherence. It matters. The next scene brings a compact dialogue between Max and Dr. Elena during a session where she reads subtle cues. You can hear the soft breath, the faint creak of the chair, the smell of tea. Dr. Elena says, "Where does your body hold the future when you imagine it now?" Max answers, "My chest tightens and my tongue lifts." Dr. Elena guides, "So lower the tongue, widen the back of the throat, let the chest soften into a container and say the sentence again." Max does it, and the room seems to tilt as if gravity paused. That micro-adjustment shifts his HRV by small margins, and he reports a thin window of clarity. The sensory descriptors multiply. The paper under his fingers, the warmth of the tea, the light landing on a dust mote like a little planet. These details anchor the experience and teach you how to replicate it. There are technical, processual steps that you can apply now to stabilize your frequency. Start with 3 daily mini-experiments. First, the breath posture loop described earlier for 5 to 10 minutes morning and evening. Second, a 2-minute voice calibration where you say out loud a short sentence in a low, even tone and listen for irregularities. Third, a micro-social test where you ask a friend a simple question and notice your heart rate and vocal steadiness during the answer. These steps are precise and repeatable. They create measurable change in your autonomic markers and train the system to remain coherent under small pressures. Repeat them for 3 consecutive days and take notes. Treat this as an empirical study on your own frequency. The moment of collapse is both paradox and surrender. It is not a cosmic thunderbolt. It is a slow softening in which you stop pulling and start receiving. Max felt it as a small internal unhooking that made the world seem less grainy. He woke one morning and a client he had not heard from for months responded immediately with an offer that aligned perfectly with his values. He did not run to celebrate loudly. He noticed a subtle reordering of attention. The field did not reward his frantic effort. It mirrored his new baseline. The truth is uncomfortable because it makes speed seem like a byproduct of being rather than doing. You collapse possibilities by stabilizing the observer within you until the probabilities that support your desire become the most likely. Integration requires time, and so we will step through an honest epilogue because you need to know what this looks like in 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months. 1 month later, you feel different in small ways. Your mornings lose the thick film of anticipatory anxiety. You move with less effort and a tactile clarity returns to your hands. There is a sweetness in the air when you walk to the mailbox, and the wind smells faintly of cut grass. You have a few concrete signs. Maybe an email you wanted arrives, or a conversation turns suddenly generous. The immediate shift is less about an object and more about permission to be present. You notice your voice holds steadier under soft stress, and a few people around you remark that you seem calmer. That calm is not complacency. It is a refined nervous system that no longer broadcasts urgency by default. At 3 months, coherence begins to show cumulative effects. Opportunities that previously felt scarce start to arrange themselves with a logic you can map. You meet people who move with similar integrity, like Priya, who invites you to host a circle, or Marcus, who shares a client lead that matches your skills. Your calendar contains pockets of unforced alignment where work and values meet. Socially, you feel more at home because you attract a different friction. Your bank account may show modest improvement, but the clearer metric is the quality of your choices. You are less likely to accept a role that frays your energy. At 6 months, the identity shift is unmistakable. Your timeline feels shorter because you live more in a present that yields. Projects that before took years now organize in months. You move with a steadiness that convinces the field and the people around you. Max, at 6 months, found that he no longer needed daily rituals as an aspirin for anxiety. He had integrated practices into a way of being so that effort and surrender coexisted. His relationships deepened, opportunities multiplied, and the work he did felt like a natural expression of his life rather than a list to clear. If this resonates and you want to go deeper with methods that combine somatic practice and accessible measurements, subscribe and join our weekly experiments. Here, we translate theory into reproducible practice without empty promise. If you want a next step today, try the breath loop described earlier and journal one small change each day for 3 days. That microdata will begin to reveal patterns you cannot see from a single anecdote. When you commit to practice, the field starts to treat you differently because coherence is cumulative. You are chosen not because you are special, but because you are willing to notice what your body already broadcasts. Your work is not to manufacture certainty, but to stop sending transmissions of lack. The field is not punishing you, it is reflecting you. When you change the pattern that lives in your chest, the world will reorganize with an economy that favors coherence. So stop walking toward the future and allow the future to walk toward you by becoming a steadier instrument. Practice the breath, tune your voice, notice how your tongue rests, engage your community in a single word, and test the 3 daily experiments. Do this not as a ritual of performance, but as a laboratory in which your body is the reliable measuring device. That is how Max transformed his life in days, and how you can begin too.
Transform yours with clarity and compassion.